civil war. The number of South Sudanese refugees in Sudan have reached 600,000.
In response to the growing need, the Sudanese government and international aid agencies, including the UNHCR and the World Food Programme, have stepped up efforts to provide immediate food and medicine to the refugees who arrive exhausted after undertaking long and risky treks.
The refugees who arrived here have all undertaken a long journey. Some of them are seriously dehydrated. Many of the elderly suffer high or low blood pressure. Usually, we first do some simple physical examination and treatment for them.
Majid Mohammed Ali, a Sudanese political analyst, says the humanitarian crisis is as a result of the United States policies towards both Sudan and South Sudan. The U.S. played a key role in helping create the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement CPA between Sudan and Sudan People's Liberation Movement, the SPLM, that laid the groundwork for South Sudan's 2011 independence referendum and secession. Ali says the U.S. has not honored the agreement by lifting sanctions against Sudan following South Sudan's independence. For the past few years, the Sudanese economy has been hit by low oil prices, the secession of South Sudan, and continuing internal crisis, while South Sudan has been wrecked by a civil war, leading to thousands of deaths and millions of people fleeing the country.
The United States took a carrot and stick approach to the administrations of Sudan and South Sudan, which has led to the worsening political situation in both countries. Washington has not honored the 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement, and now a tragedy is unfolding on the Sudan and South Sudan border, in which tens of thousands of South Sudanese refugees have flooded into Sudan because of famine. This situation is enough to make the United States review its policies towards the two countries.
According to the UNHCR, the number of refugees who fled South Sudan has crossed the 1.5 million mark, putting the country third after Syria and Afghanistan in terms of producing refugees.
In the world of business, commodity resort states remain critical game changers for Africa's next round of economic recovery, despite the rough deal the continent got in the past few years due to tumbling prices of natural resources. Well, this is according to the president of the Africa CEO Forum, Mr. Amr Ben Yarmad. Speaking exclusively to Channel's television business editor, Bosuna Mofaye, on Sunday evening in Geneva, Switzerland, Mr. Yarmad says Africa's new opportunities at the commodities market must be met with good governance and investments in infrastructure.
Why would African businesses, African leaders discuss this outside the continent? Why not host it on the African continent?
Because you probably have noticed that Africa still has a need for international investments. So the reason why we wanted to put the forum for the first edition in Geneva was to give an international showcase to Africa and to show to the world the strength of African capitalism, the strength of its CEOs, the strength of the industries. And so that's why we wanted to begin with to do it in Geneva. And then last year edition we did it in Ivory Coast, and we have decided to rotate the event between Africa and an international location, Geneva being our choice, our first choice.
If we look at the main focus of this event, for example, the Africa Rising story was just about a decade ago. Quick question, how much did you think Africa was able to achieve under the Africa Rising story until we have the commodity bust, and now we have to reshape and rethink the African business model?
That's exactly the theme of our program this year. What we have to realize that these 10 years, there's some plus and some minus. On the plus side, the interesting is that Africa is again on the international investment map. The African CEOs themselves are starting to believe in the Africa growth story, so it's very important because one of the things that Africa has to do is just not rely on international investment, also on local investment. And on the minus side, a lot of countries, mainly oil-producing countries, mining economies, have not used these 10 years of growth to make the necessary reform, to do the structural adjustment. And so they're back not to square one, because that would be a little bit harsh, but they're still facing difficulties. But at the same time, you have a lot of economies that are doing very well. All the economies that are on the eastern part of Africa, being in the influence of China, where we'll see probably a lot of industrial investments, are faring very well. You have probably approximately 10 economies that are having a growth around 7+% of growth. So we have to keep on fighting.
If you look at African continent and you want to do a bit of a country specifics, where do you see growth that can leapfrog Africa under the new rethinking and rebuilding the African model? Do you think the same commodity, natural resource countries will still be the major game changer for Africa moving forward from where we are right now?
Yes, there's no way the commodities story is not going to be a prominent story in the years to come. An oil-producing country has to take advantage of its resources to develop and to try to create other industries. Same thing for mining. So the story has to be very still important, and we'll always be looking closely at the prices of commodities. But we have other area of growth, mainly through digital innovation. We have in the healthcare business, in the education business, in the retail business. So we have a lot of room to grow, and it will depend on a lot of the strategy of every countries.
Finally, we've seen a number of African countries that were backwards 20, 30 years ago becoming emerging regional players like Ethiopia, for example. Ivory Coast is making a very strong comeback. And in the north of the continent, you find Morocco rejoining the African Union and others. Do you think these are new opportunities for the continent and for the global investors who want to play on the African continent?
Yes, definitely. What you have described is also the rise of a different Africas, not one Africa, Africa. So the way Morocco is developing, the way Ethiopia is developing, the way Ivory Coast is developing is one way. But you have people with different type of resources, different type of access to water or not, they will have another way of developing. But most importantly, the thing that we have to work on is regional integration, because we have a lot of markets that are too small to thrive. This is one thing. We have to work on governance. This is still a big issue. As long as we have not solved this, we will not have international investments.
Still to come on Network Africa. South Africa's Carnival opens in Cape Town with a magnificent display of fireworks. Please stay with us.